Good morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you get more information about this show and past shows at our website, which is www.blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Shannon Knapp, founder and president of Horse Sense of the Carolinas, and also executive director of Heart of Horse Sense. And what you can do, if you would, Shannon, is you can wave to all your friends who are watching this on wherever they're watching it. Okay, and that's Shannon. I should mention that Shannon is founder and president of both Horse Sense of the Carolinas, an internationally recognized leader in the field of equine assisted services, and she's also executive director of Heart of Horse Sense, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting professional equine assisted therapy and learning for survivors of trauma in Western North Carolina. She's also published many books and articles in the field of equine assisted services, including More Than a Mirror, Horses, Humans, and Therapeutic Practices. She's a trainer in the trauma-focused equine assisted psychotherapy for natural lifemanship. She's, let's see if I can pronounce this right, EGALA Advanced and EGALA Military Individual Designation, and instructor of Military Horse Sense, the fundamentals of working with veterans and horses. Professional in the field since 2001, she has thousands of hours in direct client contact with a direct range of diagnoses. And the question, Shannon, I always ask first time I meet somebody on the air is, as a child, you grew up where?
I grew up in Lakeland, Florida, in between Tampa and Orlando.
Okay, when you're growing up as a young woman in Florida, did you always know you wanted to work with horses?
Yes. I didn't know that I was going to be able to work with horses, but I did want to. I was into horses from the time I was wee. So we had a little pony that we had in my backyard. And so I was into horses for a good long while and then got out of it and then got back into it because I could see a way forward to life with horses.
So you had as a child, you grew up, you had a pony?
Yep. Her name was Snowball.
What was Pony's name?
Snowball. She was all white. Very
Oh.
unique. In Florida, it's a weird thing to be. Yeah.
So that was your first horse. Did you get horses after that?
Yes, I had another, again, a completely original name, Misty. She was a beautiful young horse. And then I got out of horses from the time I was in, say, elementary school through grad school. I got back into horses after grad school.
So what was the reason, like, your folks loved horses also, or the family did? What was it?
No, yeah, definitely my family was not interested in horses. They had interest, but horses was not among them. So I was the lone wolf there. But I also, I am quite clear about the fact that I work with at-risk youth because I was one. I started to get into trouble. I started to hang out with the wrong crowd and do the wrong things. And I let the horses go. And I didn't get back to them again until after grad school. So yeah.
No, it's funny you recognize that. So you knew at the time as a kid you were kind of a pain in the butt to everybody?
Well, yeah, I knew. I mean, I was getting suspended from school. I mean, there were outside evidence of me having trouble, not just me. So, and I was able to straighten up and fly right and make good grades and check all the boxes through schools. But my heart wasn't in it until I got back into horses.
So you went to graduate school for what?
English. I taught college English for a number of years. I'm a recovering college English professor.
Okay, and I'm sort of a recovering college professor as well. So what got you back into horses?
Well, because I had moved to Texas, and my husband and I, we wanted to do something that was more fun, right? We were working really hard. We had terrible commutes. We were in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we had horrible commutes, and we wanted to do something fun. So I got back into horses, taking a night school class at the local, community college, and then started just playing with horses on a regular basis. I also started volunteering at therapeutic riding places, and that's similar to what we do, but not the same. And that's when the real love and passion for what I do now really took hold.
So you said you took courses in the field. What is the field actually? What's the name of the field?
So our field is called equine assisted services. That's the
Right.
broad global umbrella term for all the myriad varieties of the work that we do, including therapeutic riding, which is what most people think of when they hear therapy with horses. They think of folks with in wheelchairs riding horses for physical reasons. And that's part of it. That's under the umbrella of equine assisted services. I became more specifically interested in the social, emotional, and mental benefits of hanging out with horses and interacting with them. And so now I'm under the term equine assisted psychotherapy or equine assisted learning. We specialize in mental health. That's what I do the most of.
But now you're in Marshall, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And you have a facility there. How many horses do you have?
At any given time, 25 is a good guess.
Wow.
I stopped counting because it changes, from week to week. It really actually doesn't change that often, but I'm not a math major. I'm an English major, so I don't count. So we started out though working with rescued and rehabbed horses. And so that's how we got off the ground. Was we were taking in horses that were abused and neglected and partnering with the rescues. And my no button didn't work very well. I was not very good at hitting no. So I'm a bunch of failed adoptions and horses. So
Is that what happens with horses like dogs and cats? You adopt them or
yeah,
or foster them?
exactly. We have fostered quite a few horses and we've adopted less, which is a good thing. We've adopted
Right.
We've fostered probably 50, 60 horses in our time, and we only have really only 20 or so of our own right now. So we're working our way in the right direction.
Now the question is, I'm wondering as you're speaking, do you know the names of all the horses?
Oh, my gosh, yes, absolutely.
Really 25 horses and you can.
Absolutely. Yeah, they've all got such unique, we call them horsenalities. They really are. They've got their own quirks and characteristics, and of course their own physical appearances. But yeah, absolutely. And we know what we call their druthers. They'd rather do this than that. We know they're druthers.
Where do you get the horses from?
So they come from rescue rehab backgrounds. So most of the time, most of the horses on our farm have come from less than nurturing backgrounds. The sheriff's department, the local rescue Hope for Horses is a big partner of ours. We've partnered with them since inception. Hope for Horses is a local rescue that rescue and rehab for horses. And we also hear from folks in the community who, for one reason or another, know that they can't take care of their horses. Now, at this point, with 25, we really only take horses that are in imminent danger. It's you or the slaughterhouse now. Which will it be? The horse that is, just not getting attention, the daughter is graduated from high school and is off at college, and the horse is languishing in the pasture, that horse has options, right? So we'll help match make that horse with the right person, but we tend to now get horses that are horses with issues, horses that are going to be put down because of behavioral issues, and those sorts of things. And we rehab them, and hopefully we find good homes for them.
So the beautiful thing about what you're doing, and I'm certainly impressed with it, is that you're not only helping other people, but you're helping the horses. I mean, you're saving lives of horses, I guess. So
yeah, that was the original intent.
To save the horses. We'll talk about then how humans come into play in this. So it's the term is it's therapy, but you're doing therapy for the horses or for the humans?
Yes, exactly. And that's what I like, is that we're doing good for both. It's good for both of us. So it's kind of the foundational principle is that if it's not good for both of us, it's not good for either of us eventually. And a lot of horse places sacrifice the horse for the good of the human. And that's not okay. I mean, to me, that's not a good relationship. And it's certainly not a principle I want to teach someone else. Like, you get to use somebody to
Right.
get your needs. So, so we started out working with rescue horses, and how people came into it was my own personal recovery and self-actualization journey, however you want to frame it, was through the benefit of hanging out with horses. And I knew what was happening to me through my experience, direct experience with horses. And I would talk about it with people in town. I would talk about, I did this thing with my horse, and people would say, I don't even really want to ride the horse. I just want to do what you do and get what you get. The way you talk about the experience of being with horses, that's what I want to experience. And I thought, maybe there's a way to make this be what I want it to be, which is not about riding. It's way more than riding, and about something that's going to be good for everybody, and not, the horse is this beast of burden that serves us. And it's not a very good principle to embody, I don't think.
Well, if you can, in that your story, I think is kind of cool. Talk about how you started communicating with the horses, or having them help you.
Well, so, when I was little, it was all spontaneous and free and, bareback and bridleless and, having a great time as a kiddo. The older I got and the more I became aware of the world around me, the more, just not healthy I got, right? There's a lot of good things that come with a solid education in the school system, and there's a lot of neuroses that go along with it. And I was a classic head on a stick. I was all intellect and nothing else. My body took me to the library and back in grad school and did nothing else. And I was really imbalanced. And so when I got back into horses, the horses were like, "You're nuts." And they behaved in ways that made me feel incompetent, incapable, profoundly stupid and broken, right? I mean, like a 10-year-old can get on this horse and do the things that I'm wanting to do, and yet I can't even pick up this horse's feet or, catch her in the pasture. What's wrong with me, right? And a lot of what I found was wrong with me was the things that make me good at being an academician are not necessarily the things that make me good at being in relationship, right? So horses really pointed out my weaknesses and pointed out the gaps in my knowledge about myself. And I mean knowledge both as in heart and gut knowledge, as well as head knowledge. Head knowledge I had plenty of, and it didn't cure me, right? There were pieces of me that were broken, that couldn't get cured by intellect alone. I had to do something with my whole body, with my heart, right?
By the way, we're talking about horses, and it seems like I've read and heard other stories similar to yours, but you don't hear them necessarily with other animals. It's just like horses seem to be, like, I'm trying to think, could you do this with other animals as effectively? Or
Well, certainly. So yes, and there's something about animals that's good for people, right?
right?
We know some of the science behind dogs and cats and, all those sorts of things. What makes horses unique is that they're prey animals, not predators.
Gotcha.
Dogs and predators. And predators and humans, right? Predators will put up with behavior that is not in their best interest to get things. And we jokingly say, but it's accurate, to get prey,
right.
recognition, and pork chops, material things. We'll do a lot to get these things that are not in our best interest. Horses don't. They're not thinking about what kind of bedding's in their stall. They're not thinking about whether they got the blue ribbon or the red ribbon. They don't care about the stuff that we tend to care about as people. They don't care about praise and recognition, which means that how we show up in those relationships are very, very different than how we motivate a predator, right? We use treats and stuff like that with dogs, and they'll do a lot. And when the treats are gone, so's the dog. And the same can be done with horses too. There's a lot of people who are, use a lot of positive reinforcement with a lot of treats. The relationship grows with the treat, but not with the person holding the treat. And I'm interested in the union, the connection of the two species. So yes, you could do this with other creatures. You could do it with deer, right? Deer are prey animals. But deer, unlike horses, are not seeking out and curious about us in quite the same degree that horses are, at least not in my experience, right? So
Now, in your experience, so also part of this is that you learned how to communicate, I guess, with horses as well, or is that part of the learning process?
absolutely, absolutely. And one of my, one of the things that I say an awful lot to myself and to other people is, the horse whisperer has become quite a
Right.
popular idea in, public culture. And it's not about whispering, it's about listening. And we need to shut up long enough to listen and really listen well, because the horse is talking all the time if we listen, right? And that's the hard part, is get us to shut up and to really hone in and tune in and listen by our eyes, right? To listen with our eyes visually to what the horse is communicating, as well as listen with our ears and our hearts. Our eyes and our hearts are vastly underutilized in playing with horses.
And talk about the match then. So I kind of get your role, or the human role in this, but in terms of how do you find then the people to work with the horses? In other words, or do they volunteer to come to you, or do you seek them out?
Well, so both, right? So most of the time, the folks that come and work at our in equine assisted therapy are folks that, by and large, have tried traditional talk therapy and found it didn't solve the problem. It may have been good as far as it went, but it was not enough to really to solve the problems, right? So this can be very effective for those folks who are tired of talking, right? I've been talking for decades. It's change, right? So tired of talking. It also can be really effective for those who don't think they need nor want therapy, right? We started out some of the biggest work that we ever did. By biggest, I mean the most work, 5 solid years of working with gang involved and incarcerated youth who were not jumping up and down to play with horses. That was not part of what they got them out of bed in the morning, right? And yet, working with the horses was the breakthrough for many of the boys that we worked with. This was with Swannanoa Youth Development Center down in Swannanoa when it was a boys' facility for juvenile youth, and that was so those for whom traditional talk therapy, tell me how that makes you feel, might get you punched at just not participating in it. And so a lot of our veterans as well are similar, like, I don't want to talk about this. We work with survivors of human trafficking. Putting language to what happened is horrifying, right? So talking about it in a traditional kind of neocortex type way can actually do more harm than good.
And when you work with people, you're mentioning, do they have to learn how to ride a horse, or do they have to learn how to do other things with the horses? Just be there?
Absolutely not. It's not about me teaching you how to be good with horses. It's not about that at all. It's about how the client will interact with the horse to either build healthy relationships or build the kind of relationships that they normally have, which will speak volumes about why things aren't working.
Now,
Right?
yeah, I'm getting it, but it's fascinating as you describe it. So when the client works with the horses work with the client, vice versa, is the client talking to the horse too, or is the horse listening?
If they choose to, all right, the horses are going to hear the feeling behind the words. They don't really care about the words. So people can talk all they want, and the horses are going to hear the tone. They're going to hear the emotion behind it more than they're going to hear, boy, you look really ugly today. You've got bumps in, right? That the kind of words that we use, they can learn things like walk, trot, canter. They certainly understand things like that. But it's not about talking to the horses. It's about doing things with the horse without using force, fear, and intimidation or bribery, which are some of the predator's favorite tools. We've all experienced force, fear, and intimidation. We've all been on the receiving end of it. Do this or else, right? And it works. right? But it doesn't build a healthy relationship. And all we're interested in is how to build healthy relationship. So we throw whips and halters and lead ropes and all that stuff. We throw it out for most of the start of any work so that the horse has choice and the client has choice and everybody gets a vote in how this goes down.
So describe, if you would, the process then. If somebody, say, for example, is watching the show now or listening to it, they hear about this concept and they kind of liked horses or may have wanted to find out more about horses. They contact you then, or what actually happens to become a client?
So first thing is to contact our office, and that's info@horsesenseotc.com. That's our email, and say, I'm interested in therapy, and that will begin the process. It's the same as if you were to, decide that you wanted to go into therapy, which blessedly more and more people are feeling comfortable with the idea and destigmatizing it. So it's, raising your hand and saying, I'm interested in possibly becoming a client. What happens next? And we do the same paperwork that you would do with a traditional therapist. And then we do a phone intake to make sure that we understand some of the issues that you're facing and some of the goals that you have. And then we'll start setting up sessions at the farm. And it'll be, 1 hour once a week, just like going to your normal therapist, except our office is bigger and who's in the office is different.
Well, and describe then that process. But before we do, let me just have you repeat, first of all, and we'll do it a couple of times, but the contact information, if they want to reach you or get more information, is what? What's the best bet?
The best way to sign up for therapy is to email info, I-N-F-O, at horsesenseotc.com. That is the therapy organization specifically providing equine-assisted psychotherapy. That's the best way to reach out and raise your hand to inquire about services.
Again, folks will also go to that same site and get information about the whole thing. Is that a
Yes.
website?
Yeah, like what is equine-assisted psychotherapy? What does it treat? How does it work? All those kinds of things will be there.
Are there videos there as well?
There are some, but it's not, the more I show you what it should look like, the more people are going to come in with an idea of what it should look like. And we really want people to come in clean, right? Just as they are, with no, one of the first activities that we might do, I might invite you to go into a small arena with 3 horses and introduce yourself to these horses in any way you choose. And I will specifically say, no right, no wrong, no, I read in a book or I saw in a movie, I'm supposed to do it like this. Do it. Just do it. And, all will be well. Just give it a try and see what happens, right? And it's a lot about how we do anything is how we do everything. You're not going to change wholesale walking in to meet horses than walking in to meet a crowded room of strangers. And we're going to learn things we all are going to learn things, the client included, about, I had no idea I came across like that. The horse is backing up from me though. I wonder why. Has that happened before? Yeah, actually it has happened before. What do you think that's about? I don't know. Well, then let's do some more of it and see if we can't figure out what's happening. What are they picking up on? Let's try some different things and see if the horse responds differently. We had one young man who was doing precisely that activity from the lockdown facility. And he went up to one horse and he kind of made a connection. And then he went over to another horse and he made a connection. And he went to this third horse, and the third horse just bumped him with his nose and pushed him back. And he took that to be a rebuff. And it did kind of feel like a rebuff. And then he went back and tried again. And the horse kind of like laid his mouth on the kid's arm. He didn't bite, but he just kind of like pushed him away again. And the boy came over to us and he's like, what do I need to do to connect with this horse? And we're like, I don't know. What do you need to do? He's a different guy. He's got a different personality. What do you think you might try? And one of the things that he tried was as he described it, he got real. He took the armor off. He took the armor that he's used to having on. He dropped in to his real self and he got real. And the horse walked over and stood next to him and said, okay, what are we doing now? So, he got real live feedback on when you show up real, when you show me your vulnerability, that I'm interested in, that I'll connect with. When you, puff up and be all bravado, I don't want you. I don't buy it.
So the whole thing, as I'm listening to it, is certainly a collaborative effort. So it's not only the horse, it's not only the kid or the adult, but it's also then you or one of your staff. Is that what takes place?
Yeah, there's always two of us in the arena. We're a treatment team. We have a licensed mental health professional and a horse professional in every single session. If there's not a licensed mental health professional present, it's not therapy, right? It might be therapeutic, but it's not therapy. So, so there's always a licensed mental health professional and a horse professional, and I'm the horse professional. And my role is about helping translate the horse, helping make sure that the horse is considered and safe, and being considered in the process and not being used as a tool, right, for our own ends, right? Does that make sense?
So, yeah. So the licensed mental health professionals, then these are typical therapists, but they've been trained specifically to work with horses. Is that it?
Yeah, we've all been specially trained to do this kind of work through those organizations with tongue twister names like Agala and Natural.
Okay, now I got it.
Yeah, those are all training and certification agencies in this field. So we come together, already a licensed mental health professional and already a horse professional, and we seek additional training within this sphere to be able to offer these services.
How long does this process take?
Well, it depends. It's a great question. And the answer is always, it depends. If you come as a fully certified horse professional,
Right.
and what those standards are kind of questionable, it's a little squishy. What makes a licensed mental health professional a licensed mental health professional is knowable. Do they have a license or not? Do they have a degree or not? Do they have letters after their name? So if you come with the criteria necessary, you can be trained in a weekend. Certification takes longer. Certification, just like other, like EMDR is a training, an additional folks who are licensed mental health professionals go and get EMDR training, or they get motivational interviewing training. It takes an additional, I would say the average process is anywhere from 3 months to a year. It depends on the rigor that you want to apply. You can get trained and certified at the end of 3 days for being upright and breathing through it, which is not, I think, a certification. So
let me rephrase the question though. I meant from the standpoint of a client coming to you having a problem. How long does this process take? It depends.
Right? So it depends on what it is that they're working on and how much uncovering we need to do. Right. We've had veterans who have been in, 3 and 4 deployments, have been, just coming in with wagon loads full of trauma, who had done a lot of work prior to coming to us, had done a lot of traditional therapy work. And in the course of 12 sessions are able to really step out of the trauma that binds them, right? It's not true for every person every time. It's about focus. It's about dedication. It's about doing the work. And so we can't guarantee that it's not a cure-all, and it's not a quick fix, but we can get further faster than in traditional therapy, because the defenses that we put up with people don't work with horses. So when I'm in an office and I'm thinking about, gosh, how should I answer this question that this therapist has asked me, to make sure that they still perceive me the way I want to be perceived. Classic question is, how much do you drink? Right? Any drinker knows how to answer that question, right? Horses aren't asking that question, but they're feeling underneath the subterfuge of that. So we can get a lot further, faster, in my opinion, than traditional office therapy, because it's completely different. It's completely different what we're doing.
By the way, I'm sorry, but I was going to say, by the way, what you're doing is in terms of the kinds of folks you work with. So it seems it's the gamut of things you can work with. In other words, you mentioned trauma, but you can mention, I didn't think of it. You can work with alcoholism. You can work with anything.
Yeah, depression, anxiety, substance abuse, classic mental health issues. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, trauma, communication. We work with a lot of kiddos that have ADD, ADHD, that are just having trouble with too much energy or too much explosiveness. We just finished working with a couple of twin boys that had some big behaviors that were getting the attention of people in their school and in their lives. And they just, and to some degree, did not know what to do with all of this kind of combustion inside of them. And working with the horses, they were able to kind of figure out, how do I need to show up in order to connect with these horses? And it was one of the, this is why we do the work. This is the amazing things that happen in 12 sessions.
And just listen to this. It must be very exciting for you to see this transformation. It's just, I'm listening to you. And like I said, traditional talk therapy works sometimes, but sometimes it never works. It seems to go on and on. And here, you actually can see a difference within 12 sessions or less even sometimes.
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, one of the things that we get we do intensive retreats. So we do them specifically and most often for veterans, where we'll spend a weekend, 3 full days playing with horses. Oftentimes the veterans have stayed on the farm. We did that pre-COVID. We're a little different now post, but one of the first things that we would hear reported by many of our trauma survivors is the ability to sleep through the night, or the ability to sleep at all in a meaningful way. So that's one of the first benefits that we often hear from clients, is an ability to exhale from a state of hypervigilance, right? And getting out more and feeling more comfortable getting out. I mean, those can happen, that can happen in in a session, in a couple of sessions. And really solidifying that, though, is where repeated sessions go, because it's not about the horse, and it's all about the horse. Because if you have to have a horse to feel better, then you're going to have a really hefty bill, and you're going to have a limit to where you can go, right? We need the learning that happens with horses to transfer to the person outside, right?
One of the exciting things I would imagine for you, and I can just see this happening, is that also, unlike traditional therapy, people aren't dying to see their therapist or come to a therapy appointment. I would imagine it's probably fun to watch that when people come to the farm, they're kind of excited at times about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They, feel understood and heard in ways that they don't anywhere else in their life. And, horses, I'm a little biased, but horses are kind of fun. And especially when you get to know these nuances, like you said, do you know all of their names? Of course, I know about every single one of them. And so do our clients, right? They know that this horse likes this spot scratched just so, and this horse doesn't actually like to be scratched at all, but likes to have a tail brushed, right? We just know these things, and they know us. They listen to us too, without all the filters of what your parents do for a living, or car you're driving, or what kind of grades you've got,
or even, I guess, what you look like. That doesn't become important to the horse.
They don't care.
Talk about also the work. We talked a little bit about, so the business is the part of Horse Sense. Talk about the Horse Sense of the Carolinas, excuse me. Talk about the nonprofit aspect of this.
Yeah, so the nonprofit came out of the recognition on my end that after 10 plus years of doing the work, I knew that myself and lots of other agencies around the country, we were so busy doing the work that we didn't have time to keep up with grants and fundraising and all of the things that you have to do to make this work, because our work is more expensive than traditional office therapy for obvious reasons, right? So I started the nonprofit specifically to do what I call the sexy underbelly of running one of these businesses, which is the fundraising, the grant writing, and the teaching some serious business skills to make sure that these programs last long enough to keep doing good, right? So we started the nonprofit specifically to do those things, to train, to educate, and to screen, and then eventually fund quality professional equine-assisted psychotherapy. So it's a great big answer. We fund specifically Western North Carolina because I want to go to every farm we fund. I want to see the horses. I want to know the credentials of everyone that we're funding. And I don't want someone to fly me to Timbuktu because they want funding. I can't keep my arms around and my connection with someone that far away. I'm just not that good. But we train internationally. So we train folks in military horse sense. So we've had folks from Canada and from all over the world, mostly the United States, train in how do I do this work with horses and veterans? Because it's not as simple as I've got a horse, let's do some of that therapy for those trauma survivors. You can do harm. If you're not trained, if you don't have a licensed mental, there's lots of harm that can be done. So we want to make sure that folks are really doing quality professional work. And we do a lot of that training to make sure that they've got good cultural competency in what they're doing, in addition to their training as a mental health professional and their training within this field. This is another layer of training on top of that. Because if you don't know what OIF and OEF is, then you probably shouldn't be working with veterans. And that's Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. So not knowing that is definitely going to hamper your veterans and equine program. And we want to help people know that.
Now, in addition to running the business and also nonprofit, I'll call this in your quote spare time, you've also done writing in the field as well.
Yes.
Talk about that writing you've done.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I am a recovering college English professor. I love writing, I love literature, and I almost immediately, when I got into this field, started fielding calls and questions. How did you do this? What did you do about that? How did you respond to this challenge? And I'm like, I've got the same questions and there's no one to ask. So I wrote, my first book is the business book. So, and that's called Horse Sense, Business Sense. The second edition of that is coming out later this year. So I wrote the first book in response to all of the requests that I was getting. And then the second book I wrote is called More Than a Mirror, and it's about how we do what we do. The first book's about starting the business and all of the stuff you need to know about running a business and my journey in starting the business. The second book is about, gosh, what happens in the arena? It's so hard to explain because it's experiential. You can't explain it. Ultimately, words will fail. You've got to feel it in order to know what it is. So that's the second.
It seems with all the stuff, doesn't seem like you get a lot of sleep. I'm just amazed. You're running a business, you're running a nonprofit, you're writing books, you're taking care of 25 horses. With that whole process, do you work with volunteers as well?
Yes, the nonprofit does. The nonprofit accepts volunteers. We have a wonderful group of volunteers, and they're there for the same reasons that, sparked your curiosity when we were talking earlier, and sparks everyone's curiosity. What is this that's happening with a horse that I'm not even riding, that's feeling so meaningful and so powerful? That's bringing me to tears just being in the same room with these horses. So the volunteers will spend about half of their time in service, scrubbing buckets, carrying hay and doing the sexy underbelly of having 25 horses and 100 acres. And then the other half of their time is learning about horses, right? It's spent in learning time. So it's service learning specifically. My husband is a wonderful natural horsemanship instructor. He'll teach how to speak horse to volunteers for half the time. I'll do some sessions with volunteers to give them a taste of what it feels like to be a client and how the work works. We do things to support the horses. How do we enrich their lives the way that they enrich ours? How are we consciously thinking about enriching their world? they who give so much to so many all week long. So our Saturday volunteering is designed to be support for the horses and a give back to the horses.
Is there an age limit in terms of people you work with?
No, we've had as young as, well, for volunteering,
Right.
it's an itty. If they're under, let's say 10, we do like the parents to volunteer with them. Depending on the kiddo, we can, once we've met the kiddo and we've met the parents and we feel it's a good fit, then kiddos of a certain age can be with us during volunteering time without their parent present. In terms of seeing clients, we've seen clients as young as 4, and we've had clients that are World War II veterans, so up into the 90s.
And the same question, if somebody's listening, wants to become a volunteer or get involved with you, what's the best way to find out information on that?
That's heartofhorsesense.org. Heart, as in your heart, of horse sense, HORSESENSE.org. So org is what tells you it's a nonprofit.
And they'll tell everybody everything they need to know to volunteer?
Yep. That there's a whole tab on our website that's volunteer, and that'll get you rolling in the process.
And folks do want to get involved either for volunteering or for therapy purposes. You're located where?
So we're in between Leicester and Marshall. So the easiest way to find us the first time is out Leicester Highway, or New Leicester Highway. And we're off of Meadowstown Road in Marshall.
Okay, and so they come up to the facility and they'll see for themselves. And I guess that's probably the best bet, just to check it out and then see if, I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, this is help lots of people, but some people it's not for everybody. So you'll know right away, speaking to you or coming out to the facility, whether this would be a good match.
Well, most of the time. So we do these free open to the public tours and demonstrations. We try for every month, every other month. The next one we don't have a firm date on, or else I would announce it now, but our website will have it updated as soon as we've solidified it. It will be in July. We will have a tour and a demonstration in July. And that's an opportunity for folks to check it out, to come witness it, to meet us, to meet the horses, and decide if this is something of value to them. We definitely don't want folks to just drive up, because we're doing therapy. And therapy isn't a spectator sport, right? So we don't want folks rolling up, hollering out the window going, "Hey, is this that place?" in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon at 3, because we probably have clients on the farm. So again, the tour are going to be.
If somebody comes to the tour, then it could be one of two people, somebody interested in volunteering or somebody interested in getting therapy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Shannon, good stuff you do. Also, I should mention as well, I know you love speaking about this, as you can see from this podcast as well. Do you also speak to groups, or if people want to find out more about this, can they contact you for a presentation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm passionate about the work I do. I love sharing it because it's made such a difference in my life. And I watch every day the difference it makes in our clients' lives. It's a good day at the office.
Sounds it. One final time, best bet to find out about either the nonprofit, the Horse Sense of the Carolinas, or Hearts of Horse Sense. Go to the website one last time. The website is what?
Yep. So 2 websites. One is horsesenseotc.com. That's HORSESENSE OTC for ofthecarolinas.com. That's the therapy business. The nonprofit is heartofhorsesense.org.
They can also find out information about your books as well there at the
at the .com.
Anyway, I'd like to thank you, Shannon Knapp, for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World podcast. Certainly opened my eyes to a field. I guess a lot of people tell you that the first time they knew nothing about this before they came out to see you.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. We'd love to have you. Hopefully you'll get to come out and meet some of the professionals at the farm.
Sounds very cool. I'd also like to thank my producer, Cappy Fassetti, for lining up the show. Hopefully we'll see you all on the next Blaine's World show at Blaine's World. Just go to the website. Speak to you, Shannon. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And we'll say goodbye if I can. See you.